You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 370, Replacements. We are going to be covering tonight the third episode of the Bad Batch series, new to Disney Plus, in week number 3. So this is pretty exciting. We've got a lot to talk about here over the course of the next 13 weeks. On top of everything else that's coming out with Star Wars, we've got this to look forward to. So we're pretty excited about that. And by we, I mean none other than me and my co-host, Mr. Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show, sir.
Appreciate it, man. How you doing?
I am good. Feeling a little rebellious today. This is not like I'm all red like this. My face looks red. I don't know what's going on. I think my camera is jacked up. It's my color coding settings or something.
I don't know. It's all the violence in this TV show you're watching
it is
making you turn red. So.
Yeah, we'll talk about that and just, hey, what do you got there?
Oh,
hold on, put that back up there. What is that?
That's the new Batu cup. This is the Star Wars. What are they called?
You were here, or I was there. Starbucks. Star Wars collaboration.
Yeah, whatever their thing is. So a very special person got this for me for my birthday, which is next week. So I'm excited. This is the maiden voyage of drinking out of a coffee cup. And for people that don't know, I love Star Wars coffee mugs, and most people have probably seen I've got a variety of them. And yeah, there's actually one at work that I've still got that I can't get to. That is really upsetting me.
No, because it's been locked down.
I haven't been to work in over a year. Yeah. So
well, yeah, it's pretty sweet. Congrats to you for getting that one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk some Star Wars. I don't think we've got anything really big in terms of news. I say that, and I didn't really look, but we'll pretend we didn't. Let's get into replacements. So, okay, give me your kind of overall thoughts. I mean, we're 3 in. It's starting to kind of take shape, take form. Starting to see some things clear up a little bit for me. But first, you, what do you got? What did you think about the episode?
No, absolutely. We're starting to take shape as the direction the show is going in. And I kind of joked before, but this one really was quite a violent episode. And it cemented it. It really took like the second or third time I was watching it for it to really sink in that this is a bit of more of an adult type of show.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say adult because it's clearly still meant for, kids. It's PG, actually. It's not PG-13. It's PG. But it just started to show me that the show, this is very much of a grown-up type of show. And we saw that with Clone Wars. We had this weird balance. Every once in a while, we'd have a more lighter episode, but even it was geared towards, I'm kind of need to be careful. I don't want to do this whole generation thing anymore because it just seems irrelevant for the most part, but it seemed to, all fans, especially our era, God, I just did it, seem to gravitate to it. It's engaging for us on a headspace type of level, a mental level. And so I'm enjoying that aspect of it while it still keeps the heart of Star Wars, which is, of course, what makes Star Wars so special is you can have all these really cool things and yet still have a lot of heart, which this episode really had the wide gamut on. But yeah, we're starting to see this conflict kind of going in and really curious what's going on with Crosshair at this point. But again, I liked it. I mean, there's really no particular standout moment, I guess, for it. But man, I just really like the episodes. I find myself engaged. I mean, they're only 22, 23 minutes long, like the actual show, but
right.
I'm all right with that. These are really flowing well for me. What about you?
Yeah, I enjoyed this one quite a bit. And the best way to describe it was I felt it was very balanced in terms of, like you said, we had the hard, we had the soft, we had the shocking moment for me. There was kind of a big shocking moment in there. So it's good. It feels like some of the Mando shows where there is that kind of a fair balance where it can be endearing at times and at the same time really make you think and make you wonder and almost put you in awe of what you've just seen and witnessed, right? So from that perspective, I think they did a really great job. What's interesting to me is that we're starting to see some of the more finer complexities that are happening between the relationships with the Kaminoans and the Empire. Certainly the relationships that are kind of starting to build and even feud within the Bad Batch, right? We'll talk about Echo and Tech here, or Teak in just a little bit as well. Tick and Echo, they kind of went at it again, and I think we called it out in the last episode. So that's starting to kind of fester. So I'm already kind of wondering, all right, where's that going?
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, and then there's a lot of good world building that's happening here. You know, we're starting to see that fallout of the galactic, or the fallout of the fall of the Republic, with the Galactic Empire starting to rise.
Mhm.
That is really starting to kind of take shape, and we're starting to see the inklings of stormtroopers, and all this is great stuff. And as much as I didn't know if I'd be that interested in it, I really am. I'm finding myself kind of hooked, and that stuff is actually hooking me more than the Bad Batch themselves. But that's not a bad
Right.
thing, because I actually, I do enjoy the Bad Batch as well. But
Well, and that was one of the things that really interested us coming in, is when we saw it was going to take place right at the time of Order 66, was what happened next, and what's
Mhm.
this transition look like, and we're kind of getting it all in a really cool package.
yeah. So the title of the episode was called Replacements, not The Replacements, not to be confused with The Replacements movies that have, I think there's like one or two of them that have been out.
Right.
But I guess it had a couple of different meanings, and this is kind of typical. I don't think Filoni wrote this, but it is typical for a lot of Star Wars animation titles. They take on multiple meanings, right? The Rise of Skywalker, there was a lot of, okay, who is the Skywalker? What does it mean? But yeah, in this one, I guess it could be a couple different people as far as who the replacements are, right?
Yeah, you kind of got it on both sides, right? I mean, you have you got the obvious one is the squad around Crosshair, but
Yeah.
also now you've got Omega within the Bad Batch themselves, right? And you start to see that they're becoming a squad. I don't know if I completely buy all that, but she's part of the family, I guess. And then
Right.
of course, we have the overarching thing, of course, with the Kaminoans and the Empire of what's going on there. So you're right, man. This is one of the cool things, and this is why I like that we're getting simultaneous stories going on at the same time now. Where before we had commented that everything was pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but now we're getting these different perspectives at the same time. So we're able to progress both stories, in sync with each other, which I'm a big fan of, without it getting too complicated. And right now it's like that right balance of kind of two things going on, but then you've got a greater just a greater threat going on to the Kaminoans specifically. And then it's interesting enough to know, is like, what are they talking about to keep you engaged, and just know that is kind of looming over the surface of everything.
Yep. So we're gonna break this down probably to the nth degree. And so now, normally we do our shows on Sunday nights. This Sunday just happens to be our official 10th anniversary, so that'll be celebrating. We'll have a show special. We'll talk about that at the very end. What's that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, we've not been doing anything about this, really.
No, yeah,
not by surprise.
Up there. Yeah, the Big 10 up there didn't mean much.
Yeah, but so normally we do this on Sunday. So by now, most people have already seen the episode. So if you're joining us for the first time, or not familiar with the show format, we are going to get into many spoilers. And I know the show's only been out for less than 12 hours at this point, maybe more than that, but less than 24 hours for sure. So you've been warned. Again, we are going to pick apart this thing to no end. So this one opens up on the Havoc Marauder, which I keep saying the name. I'm pretty sure that's the name, but they don't ever call it that. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. It doesn't matter. But we can see that they've taken some damage, right? They were on Seleucami, took some damage from the ship there. It's, it opens up with the crackly lightning thing going down there at the bottom. And then we get the gonk. So I know I joked about this, and I'm like that excited about it, but I really am, because like, they don't have a droid, right? There's no, apart from AZ3, who came back in this episode, which I was hoping they would bring her back, it back.
Well, kind of.
We don't really have a droid yet. And it just, Star Wars feels like we need to have a droid. We had Chopper, and there's been R2 and all the other droids throughout the Clone Wars, and of course the movies. Resistance had their own. But yeah, I would like to see this Gonk droid actually get a name and have a role, even if he's just like the next Geode, where
beat me to it. Yeah, I was like, he's Geode.
It's Geode all over again, right, on screen, and he's just there, and they're cracking jokes or stuff. That would be fine with me. But yeah, at least we got to see him. And then Wrecker jumps out.
It's a cute background type of character. I agree with you. It's just this cute little thing. It doesn't have to be as obnoxious as Chopper was, but it's cool just to kind of have it in the background somewhere. I like it.
Yeah, I like Chopper's obnoxiousness. I think that was one of his more redeeming qualities.
Well, right, but it doesn't have to be that over the top.
I know. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, he can just be, it's over. It's not, in your face kind of thing. It's just a running gag kind of joke.
If Twan's listening to the show, I bet you he's like, yes, more Chopper. I think Chopper's probably his favorite character ever.
Really?
So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
It says a lot about him.
Yeah, he's an interesting kid.
Yeah. Okay, so after we get that opening there, we get Wrecker, who kind of jumps down, and I threw this question there because it was never really explained. Again, it doesn't really matter, but it matters to us.
Right.
Was that his space that he gave up, or was that just a common space that he decided to decorate at the very end for Omega's space? But you clearly see him jump down from that at the very beginning of the episode.
I don't know. And when she was in the room at the end, I was trying to figure out what that was used for because it looked more like a chair and had a window in the back. And
Yeah.
usually
Maybe
you
for like
won't.
a turret or something at one point,
That's what I'm
or
thinking.
observatory of some sort.
Right. Something. It's not because ships don't usually have windows, right? At least not this size, except for the front. And so it was a little bit surprising, but yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing it was just a lookout or something. Maybe it's his meditation room or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it seemed a bit snug for Wrecker, but that doesn't that doesn't mean that they didn't take some privileges with some of that stuff. So that's a shame.
I imagine him sitting there cross-legged, cramped in that space,
Right.
putting together a 15-piece puzzle, right? And struggling with it. But so and then from there we get they quickly hint that rations are getting low, and I just wondered if that's now going to be a future plot thread, right? Next episode they got to go to a planet because they're getting low on rations. They've already established that. They're going to need some food. All this kind of makes sense, and there are some kind of common tropes that they're following here, which is fine.
We know that, and they were taking stock of the inventory and whatever. So it all makes sense, right? They left in a hurry. They didn't stock up or anything like that. So they have munitions. That's about it.
Yeah,
they didn't really think they would need food, but yeah, they have life support. So they're okay there, I guess. But food, not so much.
So we get to Echo, and I think if I remember correctly, Echo was mad at Tick because he didn't tell them that they had some damage, or it was something along those lines. But it's the second time that Tech's withheld information, and I don't know if that's going to be a reoccurring theme or that's just part of his personality. But nonetheless, they do kind of go at each other, and you can see it clearly. Kudos to the animation. You can see the frustration on Echo's face, and part of that I think is he's used to working in a team like with Rex and those guys, right, where they are gelling, they're looking out for each other, they're not withholding information, and then you've got him being thrust into the Bad Batch, where you've got somebody like Tech who is he's kind of pompous a little bit, right? He knows he's smart, he is elite, he calls the regs, and he almost says it very, condescending when he talks about them in that manner. But beyond that, what do you think is going on there? And do you think this is going to fester and boil over where they kind of go at each other at some point, or how do you see this kind of playing out?
I see this as an overarching thread, like with the Empire's perspective of clones and that too, right? And I think it's very astute of you to point it out because it didn't trigger until you started saying it. That this group is used to operating independently as a team. If that makes they're very interdependent, but they really can operate completely on their own if they really want. But they each have a different set of skills, so they work well together. Whereas you're right, Echo is used to working in a very strict system. In a system where they all know what they're all going to do. They all know what their regional jobs are. Yeah, their roles and their different units and whatnot. And it's very much an adjustment for him. And I could see where this is just a rub. And I don't know if this is going to actually go anywhere, considering it would have to be a pretty quick arc. And right now it's kind of focused on Crosshair, so we'll have to watch this. But it's something that could. I don't know. It would make sense too if they really needed a story, I guess. I hope it doesn't, though. I like Echo and I want him to be part of the group. But it's natural, though. I don't know how long it's been since he was made part of the group, but I would have thought some of these things would have ironed out. But you're right. Tech is kind of a jackass most of the time, but I don't think he's withholding things intentionally. I think he's just like, that's what it was.
Right.
He just assumes everyone should know
know what he knows.
Because he's already moved on. He's already 5 steps down the road from it. And is already doing it. And man, Tech's reactions throughout this sequence, I was just rolling. I was laughing so hard because I'm the only one that laughs at this kind of stuff, of just his really weird comments about it. Just absolutely loved it. But even Hunter jumped on Echo, Echo, I thought you fixed the lights, and that type of thing. So I was surprised that Hunter jumped on him too. And maybe that's just the squad leader saying, hey, you said you fixed it. Why didn't you fix it? But it seems like we're piling on Echo just a touch.
It's not my fault. So, and not to get all business on you guys, but there's there's the 4 stages of team building, right? There's forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Right.
I can see it, right? They formed already. This is the storming part. So they
go back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, and they can regress and all that at times. But So I mean, I think it's just kind of part of the natural progression of a team suddenly getting. I mean, they had quite a bit of change. They lost a member, and they've introduced a member, and they've introduced another member. So yeah, I think there's going to be some bumps and pains along the way. But I'm with you. I think this is probably it'll probably fester to the point where they come to terms with it and figure out how to get past it and work together. And I think those two, and I said this before when we came on, the pre-batch, the final hype show. Like you can see where those guys would be really good working together, right? You've got somebody who's kind of a slicer programmer kind of thing versus and someone who's got the technology side of it all. We saw that in the last episode where they were working well together. They just don't know it yet. And I think that's going to continue to surface here a little bit as the show goes on.
Right.
And so Tech then brings up, and I think we got a pretty good amount of information. It started, like I said, the stream is starting to we're kind of seeing where it's going to go a little bit, right? But he starts talking about the inhibitor chips.
Yeah.
And
building a scanner. Yeah.
Yeah, he's building some kind of a device to check to see if they have the chips. I guess. I mean, it wasn't clear.
I think they're checking. I think he was going to check. I thought he said something, maybe the effectiveness of it, or
yes,
something like that. Just how effective it is, or how profound it is, and what kind of influence it's having on each of them. But,
yeah, he says he wants to test the functionality of the inhibitor chip. I think that's
curious.
It's important though, right? Because in my head now, especially with what we saw with Wrecker, which we're going to come to here in a little bit, and we know now that there is going to be a rescue. I'm glad they cleared that up a little bit later. That Hunter's struggling with the fact that they had to leave one of theirs behind. You've got Omega hinting that, hey, we'll save him at some point, and that's probably way later on. So a couple things there, right? You've probably got a redemption story coming from Crosshair. You've probably got some kind of a liberation, maybe potentially with the clones. You've got potentially Wrecker going off the rails a little bit. You've got Tech already working on a proactive solution for it. So all this seems like it could line up for him to get into the chip, reverse engineer it, if you will, try to understand how it works, and then potentially use that in some way to make Wrecker better. Rescue Crosshair, move that from him, and then maybe even, like we've talked about this, speculated about them having some kind of a uprising of the clones, as in Legends, but spurred on by the Bad Batch, right? Because of their actions, they liberated or freed the clones and allowed them to escape, or some of them escape, or whatever. And I don't know. I guess they'd be changing Legends a little bit, but I think there's potential here for all of that stuff to happen. I know I'm waxing a lot of theory here, but hey, it could happen.
To go down that rabbit hole, though, I mean, is that why the stormtroopers are, not as effective, or is it just that they are just conscripted, or they're just regular people and soldiers, of why they're not as effective in the original trilogy days? Or is it because no, they had to wipe them all out, start from scratch? I'm just curious at what point, because I'm with you. I think that's a very real possibility that they're gonna, if we put this frequency out, it'll rewire everyone.
Yeah,
we've seen that story a bunch of times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm curious if it will, like, in what time of that time frame of what that's going to fit, where that's going to fit. Are they going to have enough non-clone soldiers at some point to actually have a head-to-head, or is this going to wipe out the army? And this is where they get desperate and have to hire just everybody on, that they can find.
Yeah, and by hire we mean like draft, right?
Yeah, and we'll touch on that. Yeah, we'll touch that a little bit later, because I'm confused.
I am too. Help. They keep using the word conscription, and it's
but then they talk about willing volunteers. I'm like, and I think I put it in the show notes. I was like, what's his name? Rampart needs a dictionary, keyword conscription, because he doesn't know what he's saying.
Yeah, well, we'll come to that here in just a minute. Okay, so he mentions no critical system. This is like the behavior, the personality of Tech, right? No critical systems were really impacted. However, they're now on a crash course with his moon, because they've lost whatever, and they've got to have the canister to fix it all and all that. But
his answer, though, life support systems are okay. We're fine.
You're breathing. What more do you want, dude? I've already checked it.
I cracked up so hard. We're fine. He's just doing his own thing.
Yeah. So, but there was one thing though that I did like, and it's the notion that whenever you're pulled out of hyperspace now, there's that red flash.
That's cool.
And it was in the High Republic. We saw that, we read about it, but it feels like they're being more consistent with this. I know it's like a split second, but if you see it, you'll know it, you recognize it. So kudos to them. And then they're on this, so they're on this collision course with this desolate moon. Omega straps in. This is where Wrecker bumps his head, I guess. They don't really show it. I mean, it kind of happens.
They actually do.
Did they? I didn't catch that if they did.
So it's after they're strapped in the roller coaster, restraints.
Harness, yeah.
And
no seatbelts, by the way. I don't know who designed this.
I know,
Ralph
right?
Nader would be upset, by the way. So
I always laugh though, because they are like the restraints you have on a roller coaster for the ones that whatever's. But yeah, you can actually see he hits his head, and there's a sound effect too with it. I went back and looked specifically for it, and it is there because I was like, oh my god, something's wrong with Wrecker, and they was like, well, I bumped my head, so I went back, and you can actually see it happening. But even still, the question is still valid. When he hit his head, did something happen as a result?
Yeah.
And I think that's something we'll have to wait and see on, because he was definitely not right for this episode. But
and it's kind of, it served two purposes. There was the
convenience factor of it.
The convenience factor of, I guess Wrecker can't go with Hunter to go get the canister back because he's got a hurt head, which, I mean, the guy takes blaster bolts to the chest and he's fine, but okay, whatever. Yeah. But I think that speaks to a larger issue here, like you said. So it's, it's passable, right? It passed the sniff test for the most part. There was that moment where he was saying, we're going to die, we're going to be fine, realizing again, the adjustment that they're having to make by having this small child with them, and they can't just blurt out what they're feeling because, kids respond to that, and they, they can share the same reaction. Yeah. So they, he immediately, of course, corrects there in terms of what he's saying, although he probably does feel like they're going to die.
Well, it was the second time he kind of overshadowed the kid, because when they were handing out the rations and she offered him his, because he wanted seconds. And Hunter was like, what are you doing? She was going to have a place to sleep, which, of course, a little bit of foreshadowing there. We kind of knew what was going to happen there, and he's like, oh, yeah. And I thought he was going to be a bit selfish at first, but then he was like, oh, no, I'm just not used to having a kid. And Hunter even looked a little bit comforting in that, and understanding and empathetic. Like, yeah, none of us are used to it. And just the way they animated his face, I thought was really nice. It wasn't as hard for a moment there. And talking to Wrecker, which we've not really seen before between the clones, we haven't really seen them give each other any kind of empathy or support in that kind of way.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. It was just a second there, but it was a nice touch.
Yeah, and Wrecker doesn't look like he's missed a meal, to be honest. So I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah, he's a grown boy though. You don't keep that kind of figure without sustenance, buddy.
Yeah, about 6,000 calories a day. So we get another happy landing. There's a joke in there for you Star Wars fans. They get to the desolate moon, and I put another one. There's a storm coming, Annie, because apparently there's a storm and it's knocking out their communications, and there's the whole we're missing a part, and we've seen all this before, but again, it plays up pretty well.
It was Phantom Menace. There were a lot of callbacks, by the way. There were like 4 or 5 alone in this, but it was Phantom Menace. So that was one. That's number 1, folks.
Yes,
keep count.
And this is where Omega knocks over the crosshair.
She pulled it down.
Did she? Yeah, because she was like, "Is it in here?" And she knocks it over. That was a terrible Australian or New Zealand accent, so I do apologize. Anybody listening?
I'm proud you said New Zealand.
Yeah, instead of Australian. Stupid Americans. It sounds Australian, but yeah. So they knock over this locker thing, or what was it, a weapon kit or whatever they called it,
right? And
of course that was everybody had a real sobering moment there that, hey, we lost one of ours is gone. I wondered, we see her with a cross or a bow and arrow, like an energy bow of some sort from the trailer. I'm wondering if that's actually a weapon now that belonged to Crosshair, and maybe it was in there, or she stumbles across it, or maybe, who knows. But it was interesting that they talked about the weapon locker and they made it a point. And again, it's probably serving 2 purposes, should that be the case.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's obvious that everybody is kind of reeling from the loss of Crosshair, but it's Wrecker of all people that's the one that says, okay, I'm not afraid to say it, I kind of miss him. And of course, this meathead gets shot, and he's there. They tease him about it, like he shot you, and he's like, "Yeah, but that was a great shot," or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, it really hurt. Yeah.
Yep. But
he just wears his emotions on his sleeves, though. He just doesn't have a filter for it, which is fantastic. I mean, somebody needs to do that for this group. So why not be Wrecker? He's also got a teddy bear, so it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, yeah, we'll see. So Tech this is where we get some more meat, because Tech starts questioning whether the chip was able to influence Crosshair, and because I think Omega was the one that brings it up, where she confirms it, that that's what it was meant to do. So again, we talked about whether it's an inhibitor versus an influencer or a reprogrammer of some sort. It does look like it's kind of going down the reprogramming, influencing path, which would explain a lot. The name still kind of is a misnomer for me then, if it's really kind of a inhibitor chip. But what do you think there?
No, I think exactly right. Inhibitor, whatever you want to, whatever it might be or should be called, is definitely accurate. I mean, this is the path we're going down, where they've got to figure out some way that figure out how this thing works, and the scanner is going to go a long way for that. I'm curious how long it's going to take for them to get us there, depending on how many other in between moments we've got here. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not else to say about that one.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I put in the notes, it's complicated in terms of how it works.
Yeah.
So we'll see. This is, again, they're just going to keep giving us little bits at a time in terms of how all this works. And we'll get what we need when they want to give it to us. So,
right.
And it's at that point, Hunter's like, okay, we need to stop talking about this because we got more story to tell later in the episodes. But really what he was saying is we need to get started on trying to fix the ship so they can get off this blasted moon.
Yeah. Get off this rock.
Yep. So we get AZ3. This is the robot. We're back on Kamino now.
Yeah. Looks like it's been wiped.
What's that?
Because it's very compliant now. So it's almost like it's been rebuilt and memory wiped. So it has no idea.
Yeah.
No personality.
Bummer.
Yeah. That was sad.
But yeah, I noticed they didn't call. They're not calling him Crosshair, so they're just referring to him as CT
9904.
9904. Which
they always did though, right? I mean,
I think the
Kaminoans always did.
Yes, the Kaminoans always did.
Right.
The clones talk to each other by their call names.
Right.
So probably not a big deal there. Okay, so here we go. We get more meat. Nalase and Tarkin are kind of monitoring how well the procedure went, and so this is when they ramped up Crosshair's chip, and Tarkin seems very suspicious that he's going to stay that way, whether or not he'll stay that way. So, right. And I'm starting to wonder now: is it is there anything in that, or is it just simply okay? He doesn't trust him because he was part of the Bad Batch, and he knows that the other ones defected and they weren't influenced by the chips, or is there something else going on here with the procedure that they're watching or closely monitoring that we're not aware of?
Well, and I know where you're going with that. I think there was a gap there of is there some behavior that he exhibited that made him pause at something or question? We haven't been given that impression what we've seen on screen though. But I kind of took it a bit of a different way though, that Tarkin's interest is to get rid of the clone army, right? In some form or fashion, get rid of the clone army. So I think he's nitpicking. He's looking at every little thing that could be a problem and continues to challenge it. No matter how small it might be, there's got to be a problem. There's going to be a hole in this, and nope, that's unacceptable. We're going to shut this down. We're going to phase it out, or whatever it is. So that's how I keep looking at it. Is really Tarkin's, his initiative or his directive here of what he's trying to accomplish, and that there's really, I don't know if there's actually anything wrong with him. Or I mean, again, but then he's seen his brothers though, and he calls them his brethren, his brethren later on. So it's curious that Tarkin, equates them as brothers rather than squad. Right?
Yeah, right.
So I thought that was an interesting choice of words at the very end of the episode.
Yep. There's enter Rampart. So I think someone mentioned this, or someone looked it up for us on Wikipedia a couple episodes ago.
Yeah,
the first episode, maybe the second one.
Second one.
Yeah. And I'd mentioned that he'd been spoiled a couple weeks, maybe about a month ago, but I wasn't sure in what capacity he was going to be in. But he does seem to be the Callus now, right? Maybe, for lack of a better term.
Sounds like Callus too.
Yeah. but yeah, so we get to see him, and we see that he's responsible for the implementation of the chain code. So we get to see the origin there, I guess, if you will. But he didn't necessarily come up with it. He's in charge of. He's overseeing to make sure that it's deployed and it's implemented the way the Empire sees fit. And it seems like Tarkin's pretty happy with how it's going. But Tarkin, and I hyper focused on this, and again, may not be anything here, but he said it's foundational. He sees that chain codes are foundational to the success of the Empire at this point. And I don't really have a good explanation. I mean, there's some obvious things there, but it just seemed like he was putting a lot of weight in this chain codes. And I'm just starting to wonder if there's going to be something else that comes about of it that we're not aware of just yet.
Well, it's going to be one of those. I started looking at this a little bit differently. It's going to be the exceptions to the chain code that they're going to be looking for. So if you register everyone, it is going to be more difficult for you to move around freely, which, Star Wars teaches us a very different lesson of that. You can have a blockade in one place, although the other side of the planet is totally fine, but we've got to go through the blockade for some reason.
Have to.
But, drama. But I look at it that way, like, especially if they're still hunting Jedi and things like that, for anyone to book passage, like in the mix of the public, of just the general population, it will be much more difficult for them to be able to do these things. So having people registered and having them, I mean, of course, then if you've got criminals or people that you want to off or whatever it is, it's useful to have identification for them or someone that turns on you, and even political reasons, I would suppose. And we'll probably get a whole political arc about chain codes at some point. That's a joke, folks. I hope not. But yeah, so I kind of view it that way, that they'll be able to hunt people who don't have one, and they'll pop out a little bit more when they try to get transit somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I can see that now. So you're saying it's they're going to watch. It's more about watching the people that aren't following along and filing in rank and order with the chain codes. So
right, yep,
that makes sense. There's now a mention at this point in the show or the episode where they talk about Project Mantle, which is for those of you playing at home is
War Mantle. Yep.
War Mantle. Yeah, Project War Mantle. That's one of the Rogue One things, along with Project Stardust and all that. So, it's probably them going, "Hey, this could work. Let's use it here." Project Mantle. But I guess high level, what is Project Mantle?
Yeah, War Mantle effectively is
Mantle. Sorry,
that's all right. You just like the word mantle.
I do like mantle.
It's great. Effectively, it's basically the replacement of the clone army, right? And in some way of having fewer clones that lead volunteered conscripted soldiers. I used finger quotes for everyone so that I'm not an idiot. But basically the clones leading these elite soldiers in order to enhance them and create a really a true grand, or like a great army with no limitations. There is holes all over this thing and flaws in this reasoning altogether. But the general premise though is that, and then I guess at some point the clone leaders would be phased out as well, right?
Yeah, I mean train these other guys up. Yeah. It's it's like not to bring this into the corporate world, but somebody comes in, train the trainer, and then train that trainer out, because these guys are cheaper, right? If you can bring somebody in that's cost much less, train them the skills that they have with somebody that's more expensive, and then phase that person out. Right. Hey, the corporation wins, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, that does happen. So, and it's kind of what's happening here. I mean, if you think about it, these clones are at this point probably at the peak. They've been fighting alongside the Jedi, right? So that's been their commanders. So they've got quite a bit of knowledge, quite a bit of strategy and tactics. They've learned from the best, if you will, some of the best. And on top of all that, their genetic code alone is from Jango Fett, right? So he was kind of like the finest specimen. And so, I mean, they kind of are in a position to be the greatest of the greatest clones. But then later on, we get word from Nala Se that, or was it Nala Se or Sue? One of them. Yeah. Lama Su or Nala Se had said that the genetic code was starting to degrade a little bit, which we'll touch on in a minute. But nonetheless, these guys are, probably the best batch, if you will, of clones at this point, given just what they're coming out of or coming off of. So from that perspective, they've got the chops, I think, to lead. And I saw it was kind of interesting to see that the clones now are the commanders leading the superior troops, when we had the same thing in the Clone Wars, where the Jedi were the commanders leading this verse. So they've almost taken the role of the Jedi in that perspective. But
yeah, same with the numbers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Numbers and names. Yeah.
Numbers and names are being reversed. So there's a lot of shift that's happening here. And so at this point, so he talks about they talk about the sustainability of the clones, and I think it's Tarkin that's mentioned that they're not sure if they can sustain. And for me, I guess it's just cost, right? I mean, what else is it that the Empire doesn't like about the clones at this point?
It's the only thing he really references. But I mean, I can see where, I don't know. This is where I have a bit of I'll just call it confusion. I won't call it a problem. Just confusion. Is you have a huge army that followed your orders with the exception of like 5 people, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
more or less.
Right. More, give or take, a few. Right. So why would you, to me, that sounds like a fantastic army. You have them coded. They will not break rank and file. You can depend on them. They turned on their generals who they'd worked, like you stated, for years, and some of them formed very close bonds with them, and they still were able to carry out the order without hesitation. So it's really, I'm confused as to why this is so important to the Empire to do this, because, I mean, they've got a great team. I don't understand. I'm so confused by this. And this is why I have you. You can make sense of it all for me.
I have a theory.
Oh, let's do it. Hold on. Where's my tinfoil hat? One day I'm going to bring a tinfoil hat.
And put them on.
I am.
All right, everybody get ready. No,
That's
it's
right.
not. It's not that complicated or complex, and I think it makes sense, at least in my head. But I wonder if, so I'm wondering if they're starting to see. So they mentioned, and this goes back to the Django Fett DNA thing, right? That they're starting to see the deterioration, and it's almost kind of they're getting diminishing returns, right? With the clones because they're using the same genetic DNA, and
hmm
I guess over time it's not providing their or giving off the results or giving the results that they want. So I can see a scenario where these clones that have been produced are starting to, I'm going to call it malfunction. We saw it with um, Cup, right? The inhibitor chip kind of screwed with him a little bit. He went against his orders. What's to say that these things aren't, the inhibitor chips are going to start failing? And that's why, and remember earlier I said, and I kind of led you on, I was trying to bait you, but I said Tarkin seems hyper focused on let's just see how he does. And I'm starting to wonder if they've seen other clones now because they're so far down the chain, the evolution chain, if you will, from the original DNA, that these inhibitor chips are starting to have some kind of they're starting to malfunction. And so they're not, even though they are today, like you said, they're rank and file, they follow orders, you've got them at your command, but they're loose cannons, and they're going to start doing things that they're almost too programmed, and so they went too far because, or now they've gone too far, and so they're trying to kind of pull back a little bit and say, okay, we're going to go with conscription soldiers instead, or people that are free thinkers, and roll the dice on those guys just being loyal by throwing money and food and shelter at them, rather than having these guys that there's a ton of that at any moment could suddenly turn on us because they're wired incorrectly, or they're getting bad. You know what I mean? So
So
I
to
don't
that,
know.
so to that effect, do you think this is more of a like what they're doing with Crosshair? Is this a stress test for the inhibitor chip then? 'Cause
Maybe.
kind
Yeah,
of
like,
it
I
kind
think.
of starts to feel that way then. If like to follow your theory through,
Yeah.
like how much can this thing take, and how much can the soldier take before one or the other or both start to go haywire and start to break down?
Yeah. Maybe. And I think that's probably, I think we're going to see Crosshair heading out on several, different missions. It's almost like you've got two parallel stories going on. You've got the
Yeah.
Crosshair and the Elite Squad going on. They're monitoring that, seeing how that's going. You've got the dynamic of the Kaminoans and the Empire, and now they're going to be introducing a new species or a new clone of some sort, right?
Right.
And then you've got the Bad Batch who are kind of doing their own thing with the relationship with Omega. But on top of all that, they're trying to figure out, how do we free our brothers? How do we make this thing better? And I think removing the chip probably ultimately fixes everything for all the clones, whether they're programmed or starting to go haywire in some way.
Didn't work out for fives, but yeah,
Well, that's very true. Yeah. So
there's risk. There's risk with it.
there's definitely risk that's involved, but
Yeah.
I don't know, it's the best I got, man.
It's feasible.
It's possible,
It's possible.
as Mark Hamill would say.
That's right.
Okay, so we talked about the sustainability, and yeah, I think right now on the surface it does look like it's just a money thing, which makes sense, right? Well, sort of. If anybody has money, it's the Galactic Empire at this point. But you know what? They're just penny pinchers, I guess.
I'm gonna jump on your bandwagon though. We'll go with that.
Okay.
It's not just all about cost. There's a hidden motive.
There's a hidden motive. There's got to be, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're introduced to the Elite Squad, and they look pretty cool. Like, I liked them. There wasn't many of them. There was like four of them.
Four.
Yeah. And they look like stormtroopers. They didn't act that way, which we'll get into in a little bit. Surprisingly, I was very surprised by that, believe it or not, or maybe not. But yeah, I think I theorized or said that when we first saw Crosshair in that helmet, he looked like the Dark Troopers. And I'm just wondering where these guys go. Like, what do you think if you just, again, tinfoil hat stuff, who do these guys turn into? Are they dark troopers? Are they
You mean
normal stormtroopers?
You mean the
Elite
Death
Squad.
Troopers?
Death Troopers, sorry. What am I saying? Dark. There are dark troopers, but that's not what we're talking about here.
Right.
Death Troopers, yeah.
That seems like a reasonable possibility. I think also we've seen elite squads throughout Legends, I think. And no, we've seen them throughout the Clone Wars. If you read any of the graphic novels or the old comics and things like that, we've seen these special groups, not quite like Clone Force 99, but in general areas where they're just special forces, right?
Right.
And so I think it goes that line, but again, I think also it's like having the Navy SEALs or the Marines, right? You need that really specialized group that can go in there, and they also have very specialized training as well, and they can go and pass some of that down. And I imagine the way that they pitched it was that you'd have these elite soldiers, and then maybe they would break and start to train their own squads as well. in your train the trainer type of model a bit.
Yeah.
Is that, you have a clone here, but again, once that gets to scale, that probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and you really do need elite teams. But we didn't really, we don't really have much on these guys. We don't know where they came from all over the galaxy, right? There's 4 of them, 2 men, 2 women. One likes to run his mouth, and it gets him in trouble later on.
Yep.
And his voice sounded so familiar too. I didn't
don't
look
know.
to see who the voice actor was.
I looked it up as well, and I don't remember seeing anything that he's been in before. Sorry, I can't. No, there was nothing there. I'm thinking of. I'm also thinking of Rampart.
Yeah,
I looked at his as well because I hadn't seen anything that he'd been in. But so yeah, no, it did sound familiar though. So sorry.
No, yeah, but anyway, I think the Elite Force, they can go in a bunch of different directions. We'll have to see a bit how it is, but yeah, I'm kind of, the Death Trooper is a very logical conclusion because they've got the stealth black going. They've got this green, visor going. They all have a bit of a different helmet though. Still, Crosshairs in particular was more of a straight across visor. Of course, he's still got the antenna that comes down, or the whatever it is, the scope type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, still a pretty good group though, and they all have a different specialty, just like the Bad Batch does, right? They've got heavy artillery. One's got a flame. I still don't understand why we have flamethrowers. It just seems totally ineffective, but that's a thing apparently. Let's go throw the flames at the ship.
Yeah, it doesn't always work.
Dramatic pause. Yeah,
it's good for burning people, as we saw in The Force Awakens, but beyond that, and we saw it in
burning buildings. We saw Mandalorian.
True.
Mandalorian made the most sense, right? Because they're in a confined. There's no way in or out, and they just set it on fire. So either you die in the fire, or you make a run for it, and you smoke them out. But maybe they were looking to do the same thing in the thing, but in the ship. But I don't know. I just don't understand flamethrowers.
We should have called this episode, "What's the deal with flamethrowers?"
Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld kind of thing. Okay, we get back to the moon, and Echo and Tech are switching out the part. And dadgummit, he didn't close that up. Boy, had he only just put the cover on that replacement part, then I think we would have been fine. But it did introduce us to the Ordo Moon Dragon, which I wonder.
Sounds like a mount from World of Warcraft.
Yeah, it does. Right? It does.
I want one.
Yeah. If you get somebody to sub for you, after 30 days, you get your Ordo Moon Dragon.
Refer a friend.
For a friend program. But it's, I got, again, it's like the space slug. And I know it's got a formal name, but that's what we called it back in the day. But like, what does this thing eat? Right? I mean, it's on this desolate moon. Does it just sit there and wait for years and years for some poor saps to land and it can go steal a flashlight? I don't know.
Right.
But it definitely, it had some stuff. I mean, you saw it in its lair. It's collected some things, but I don't know what this thing is eating, staying alive.
This is basically major callback number 2. I guess you could say third one, because crashing on the moon itself was very Mandalorian-like. So we'll give that credit. So that's already 2.
Or Dagobah.
Yeah, exactly. So this is number 3.
Or Coruscant.
Coruscant. Crescent?
No, Coruscant, when they, another happy landing, but sorry.
Jedi. Right. But yeah, so now we've got the creature that runs around the ship, scares the kid, very Leia-like, right?
Very Leia-like, yeah.
And it eats energy, and they have to go hunt it down. And they have the masks, which actually I think those are really cool masks. Actually,
they are.
Han needs an upgrade.
I know. Why does his got a tube? These guys don't have tubes. Like
I know, right?
They're regressing in tech.
They don't even attach to anything. You see what they're moving. Anyway, really would digress from 1980. But yeah, again, it was just very Empire-like. Like there were many moments in this. Actually, you had almost exact frames, like the cinematography and all of the framing of the shot was exactly like one of the other films or something else. And this was, again, exactly like Empire Strikes Back. It was like almost verbatim, which again is cool. And we saw a lot of this with Mandalorian, right? So it's very in line with what we've been seeing in Mando. It's interesting. It's interesting to see so much of it in one episode of a Clone Wars Bad Batch type of thing, though.
I would agree, and I think it's Filoni paying tribute, paying homage. Right. I think we're probably at a point now too where there are people that are into Star Wars, but they don't go. They've only seen, and I know this sounds going to sound shocking, but trust me, it's true. They've only seen like the original trilogy a handful of times ever. Yeah. Right? They've seen the sequels more times, or they grew up with the Clone Wars and prequels, and they've seen that a billion times, or so they don't see some of this stuff. So somebody like a Dave Filoni who was around for all of that, and now this is his opportunity to kind of put that in front of him and leave that little Easter egg out there, so that when they go back and watch it for the 5th time, 10 years from now, they're like, oh wait, that looks just like Yeah, the Bad Batch kind of thing. So
Yeah. They did
maybe
it there.
that's it.
They did it in Bad Batch first.
Right. Yeah. There. Yeah, I can see that happening. Okay, so we get Wrecker with a headache. Now, he keeps talking about his headache again throughout the entire episode. And again, we mentioned it's kind of serving two purposes. But my theory, and I've kind of already exposed this a little bit, but I just felt like, what if he does kind of go haywire now that his inhibitor chip is malfunctioning? I think it puts pressure on tech to figure out a way to suppress that, get rid of it, or whatever else.
Right.
But it seems like that's kind of lining up. I don't think they're going to do something where they end up killing him or they lose him or anything like that. But I think it's going to be like a proof of concept, a forced proof of concept on them about curing Wrecker and all that, which is going to lead to them going, okay, now we can apply this at Crosshair's level or widely, systematically, again, for all of the other clones.
Right. Yeah, you can almost see it coming, right? If something's going to go wrong with Wrecker, it's not quite ready. I'm still tweaking this, and they've got to do on the fly testing, kind of like what we've been living through the last year or so.
Yeah.
So I can kind of see that going on. Yeah, he bumped his head, and it's triggering something, and it's nagging at him until it boils over for some reason. And I don't know about you, but I don't know that I'd want Wrecker pissed off at me.
I know
in close quarters. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's a
bull.
beast. Yeah, like Hulk or somebody. Like he's just going to be smashing through ships and all kinds of stuff, right? So yeah, it's kind of a danger to have him on a close quarters, as a loose cannon kind of person. So
puny clones.
Okay, and then we get Hunter taken off with Omega because she's a member of the squad, which I thought was good. Like they didn't dwell on that, and he's living by his word, I guess. Even though it seemed like there was some reluctance there, but he's like, okay, yeah, fine.
Well,
even come with me, kid.
And they kind of looked around the team, and they all just like, all right,
yeah, right. A bunch of dudes going, yeah, sure. The young kid can go out into the dangerous world.
Dad of the year,
dad of the year, exactly. I mean, yeah, I got stories of leaving the stroller on a hill and turning around, and there goes the baby.
Right.
Okay, so Kamino, we get back to Kamino, and we get some confirmation here that these conscription soldiers, again, are being compensated. And for them, it's kind of a big deal. And I can see this, right? I mean, we've always known this. Like, there has to have been some kind of compelling reason, especially by the time you get to episode 4, that this many people have signed up with the Galactic Empire. And part of it, in my head at least, not to get on soapbox here, part of it is, at that point, they're just so well established, right? They rule the galaxy. It's like the Air Force. Let's just go in. Nobody's fighting us. I'm making fun of Air Force people, and I apologize. Wife's ex-Navy, so she does it all the time. But so for them, so somebody to enlist or be recruited, I guess at that point, probably wasn't a big deal until Luke Skywalker came about, and then things really kind of got real, right? But for this period of time, it's like, yeah, why wouldn't we join, right? They've got a pretty strong grip on the galaxy. They've got the stupid Senate that they're dealing with, and that's going to get shut down later. But for the most part, this is easy money, right? Easy money, easy shelter. My family can be taken care of. There's food to put on the table. They've got nice quarters. They've got a very modern and minimalistic style on the Death Star and Star Destroyer stuff. I mean, yeah, it's like good living. So why wouldn't people volunteer? But again, conscription means that they're recruiting and they're drafting people, which I guess that's where the disconnect is for me. So maybe it is they're drafting people, but they're willing to just take anybody that signs up too. So maybe it's some kind of a combination of it.
Right. And I think you called him ESO1. I don't know if
that was in the audio descriptions. If you listen to it,
which makes sense. Elite Squad 01, right? So you kind of hear this, and there's a bit of a contradiction, I think. The more I think about it, I was listening to you, maybe I feel a little bit differently now, but he says that he was laying out what you were laying out, right? That these are the things that they're giving me, and the Republic never gave me anything. Okay, but the Republic became the Empire. So I'm a little confused why you would put a lot of faith in the Empire if you felt completely put out by the Republic. Now I can see your perspective though, and this is where you kind of changed my tune a little bit though, of we are different than the Republic. We are better than the Republic. The Republic was a corrupt and sham of a place, and we are going to correct all of that. But again, if I was really put out by the system, why would I believe anything? Why would I believe any of them to do that? But I think the other thing, though, and I think we see this with Luke later on, because Luke wants to go to the academy too, which is all the Imperial Academy, right? It's a way of escaping whatever your situation is, right? Whether it's poverty or whether it's just a crappy life that you don't like, or you hate moisture farming, right? It's just a way to get change, and it's the only way that you can find a way out to escape it. In addition to whatever other benefits might be there. For some people, it's just, no, I just got to do something with my life.
Yeah.
But this guy seems very put out by the Republic. And I was just a little bit curious why so quickly after the Republic has been, dissolved, why someone would have so much faith in the Empire so quickly again. But maybe he was desperate and just was like, no, okay, we'll give this a shot and roll with it. But clearly didn't want to adapt to all the ideals of the Empire.
Well, maybe they offered him more money, better living quarters, right? All that stuff. And he's like, yeah, this is what I deserve. And the Republic never did this because they didn't have the funds, or
right.
they weren't splashing the cash.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We don't really know what he did either. We know these are elite soldiers, but we have no idea what they actually did or what they were running, before this to actually be recruited. And these actually do sound like, we won't know about him at least. Yeah.
He was the guy when it came time to do self-evaluations every quarter, right? He was always boasting about himself. And then when he had to do his evaluation on his manager, he would rag on the manager and rag on the, the department. And he was that guy. That's probably all it really was. So we just happened to see him. There's been a lot of business talk tonight. So I apologize. And you're welcome if you're into
a long week.
It really has. Oh, where are we? Oh, okay. So Tarkin, Rampart, and Nalase are kind of eavesdropping. They're kind of watching the elite troops and, kind of listening to what they're doing. And he mentions that skills can be taught, right? So they're kind of justifying this dark mantle. Is it dark mantle?
War mantle.
War mantle.
Right, because Nalase was saying that this is this is where the clones excel, right? It was in this is where they are superior. And this is where Rampart, pitches in, well, these are skills. You can teach these things. They can get better at this stuff. You don't have to genetically breed it. And for those listening to the podcast, Albert is legit writing this down. He just wrote it on his iPad. He's holding it up to the screen. It says War Mantle. And he dots his I's and does his exclamation points with a circle, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought it was a heart, but it's actually a circle.
I can do a heart. Yeah. It's a heart now. But yeah, War Mantle. So I cannot, I'll screw it up. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Where are we now? So this is, I put this in here because there's an interesting component of the Galactic Empire. I know Pablo Hidalgo did a story. He did a book on it, which was the propaganda that goes into it. And it was always something that really fascinated me, because growing up, and again, I'm old as dirt when it comes to Star Wars, like a lot of our listeners, but and I talk about this a lot, but in the mid 80s, after Jedi, we had the role-playing games by West End Games, and that was really all the Star Wars we had for the bit of about 4 or 5 years until the Timothy Zahn books came out. And there was some other stuff in there, but it's not really important. But in those books, they would have these advertisements to join the Galactic Empire, and they were awesome. Like they looked like recruiting posters, right?
Yeah.
And so in when you read the books and it was talking about the Empire, there was a lot of emphasis in those books about the propaganda that went into it. And I'm just starting to wonder now if we're going to actually get to see some of that. I mean, by the time we get to Rebels, it's in full swing. I mean, they've got Imperial Day, right? We get the death of Darth Vader's theme, the march is going on, and that's like the official theme for the Empire and all that. But it is interesting to kind of see that, with Rampart feeling like, that this willful enlistment thing is going to help. It feels like there is going to have to be a propaganda machine behind all of this to get people to willfully join the Galactic Empire on top of all the benefits and the 401k and all that stuff as well.
Yeah, and you hear it with Solo too when he's in the thing wanting to enlist. Yeah, you're kind of hearing in the background. And I'm with you. So I of course love the artwork of Star Wars, or really concept art anywhere. And propaganda art is some of the coolest art out there. I mean, we saw this stuff back in World War II, of course, right? With Enlist Now and then the women working thing and all of that.
Right.
And that stuff is just so cool. And even some of the modern takes on this propaganda are fantastic. You can go out there and just Google Star Wars propaganda art, and you're going to get some amazing things for both sides, for both, Rebels and for Empire. But yeah, I'm with you, man. This is where the propaganda machine starts to spin up, and it's going to be in full force here pretty soon. And I have a feeling it's probably already in progress at this point. We're just not seeing it because we're still on an Imperial facility.
Yep. And there's you brought this up before we came on the show, but they really nailed Tarkin on everything in terms of how he looks, his mannerisms, the way he speaks. There's I put in here that he's all about testing, right? He wants to test the clones. He wanted to test the replacements. He wanted to test on Jeddah. He wanted to test Alderaan. Like, this guy is very, he's a project guy, right? He knows the value of testing before they go live to production.
You know who the boss is, though, and the boss don't take no, what. When
Right.
the Emperor,
So
the Emperor doesn't really have a second chance bucket. Neither does Lord Vader.
Yep.
So yeah. Oh, Kenneth just told us that today is George Lucas's 77th birthday.
It is. Happy birthday to the maker himself.
Yep.
Yeah, I meant to post a picture on social media, and I didn't get to do that. So, but I know George is listening. So, George, thank you for everything, and from all of us here at the Cantina Cast, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Is it really 77? Wow, look at that. That's significant too, huh?
Well, he was bound to turn 77 at some point.
He could have not.
Albert.
I mean, it sounds sacrilegious to say, but
let's not jinx that.
Possible. It's possible. So he's going to send them to Alderaan, right? This is their test. He's going to send them to Alderaan and wipe out these Saw Gerrera troops, which seems to be a kind of reoccurring thing. So I have a feeling they're setting this up to, I talked about kind of two parallel storylines that'll probably kind of come together at some point is kind of how I'm envisioning this. But it does seem like we have the Saw Gerrera versus the Galactic Empire starting to really kind of take shape, and it feels like Crosshair is going to be kind of behind all of that. But yeah, I mean, this is we're going to get to it in a little bit, that scene, because I think that was pretty much the standout moment for me.
Yep.
We get back to the moon, and here we've got Hunter and Omega. They're going out. They're kind of tracking. We get the little glimpses of her kind of doing the same mimicking. She's crouched down when he crouches down. She's picking up the dirt, feeling it and stuff. And this is going to play into some of the theories that we've thrown out there and others have thrown out there about what her powers are. But I think more importantly, the significant piece here is that Omega mentions that Crosshair, he had no choice, right? This, you can't really hold, and she thinks that Hunter is really down on the fact that on Crosshair, maybe because, he did what he did and he turned against them and backstabbed them and all that. But really, it's more about Hunter feeling like, man, I had no choice and I had to leave one of our own behind, and that's not sitting well with me.
Yeah, it's regret, right?
Yeah, and that was gratifying for me, given that was one of the things I brought up in the last episode. They didn't feel right, and you made the point of like they didn't really have a choice, and we got confirmation of both of those here, which was really great. Mm-hmm. But I did like the fact that she says there's probably a way that she suggests that there's some way that they could probably bring him back, and Hunter didn't balk at it. So yeah. I think that's foreshadowing.
Some of it's youthful optimism, right?
True. Very true.
Anything's possible when you're 10 type of thing. But I don't know if this is anything, but I mean, she seems to have this almost empathic ability with Hunter in particular, right? And I don't know if it's just the bond and her reading him, or if it's something more than that, but she seems to be able to read him quite well.
Mm-hmm.
And a little like too well for someone who hasn't really known this person for very long. So maybe it's just this bond that's forming. And again, she worships everything that he does, of course, but maybe there's something else developing here with her, like you said, with special abilities, because we know now that we have confirmation now that she is the next generation of sorts,
right? And some of that is, like you said, it is the youthfulness of it all, and being optimistic about it. So I'm sure that'll continue to kind of be a reoccurring thing. But yeah, I do feel like she is connected with him on a different level. And it speaks to the, we brought this up too, I think the last two episodes. It does speak to her coming across as much older, much more mature than her age. And again, I don't think they've actually said her age, but it says a lot about her. So again, maybe that's just the advanced aging that's happening. And then there's like some emotional advancement that's happening there as well. Maturity.
Yeah, maturity, right?
Yep. Okay, so then we flop back to the elite squad. I'm going to put a stop to the flipping floppy kind of stuff going on, because in just a minute, we're going to kind of take the events on Alderaan by themselves. But we go back to the dropship, and it's a very short scene. It reminded me of like Aliens, when they're kind of waiting to go down into that whole scene when they first land on that planet. But anyways, and this is where if you listen to the audio descriptions, they mentioned that one character, the one that's been outspoken, the one that's had a lot of contention with Crosshair, is named ESO1, Elite Squad 01. And he's questioning, he's like, why did they put him in charge? And I love like Crosshair's like his stance, right? It's very like anime-ish, standoffish, maybe like a Clint Eastwood kind of thing, very Western, staring him down, like, sunny kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, he makes a comment about being phased out, which I thought was ironic since they're talking about phase 3 now and phasing him out. But he's kind of getting under his skin a little bit about, hey, this guy, why is this relic? Why is this old dude leading us when it's obvious that they don't want them around and they brought us in, so they can't be that good.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's kind of the arrogance. I mean, this is part of the rub of when you bring in outside troops. The clones are meant to conform and meant to follow orders and all of those good things, and not sit there and challenge one another very often, at least, or at least they eventually get over it. But this is very much a complete. And you're right. Crosshair just looks at him with this death glare, chewing on his toothpick. This guy's an infinite supply of toothpicks. That's what he gets paid. And I don't know if you knew this.
Right, yeah, toothpicks
and ammunition. That's all he wants for Christmas.
Well, his line too of is there a problem? That was like pretty cold and calculated the way you just said it. But
yeah, and he also wants. Yeah, and he just runs his mouth. He's just, you guys are a bygone age. I'm going to be running this squad here pretty soon. Things are going to be different. And what I didn't understand was the rest of the squad's facial expressions. I couldn't tell if they were like, it's just that uncomfortableness when there's tension in the air, or if they were like, this guy's a pompous jerk, or it was like quiet acceptance. Did you get a feel as to what they were actually reacting? I could not figure it out.
I almost felt like it was, mom and dad are fighting, and so the other ones were just kind of quiet, right? They wasn't really sure. And that's kind of probably normal, right? You've got people vying for power. You've got this guy trying to establish himself as the leader, even though he's not the commander. You've got Crosshair, who's like, no, this is, you don't even know, kid, what I've been through and what I've seen. So I think for them, the personality wise, I think they were just kind of sitting back, waiting to see, okay, who's gonna end up being victorious here. And they got their answer in a little bit.
Right.
So we get to Alderaan. Oh, no, you brought up a good point. I don't want it to go unmissed. And I didn't even thought about this, but you brought up the Clone Wars episode where they're in the bar.
Yeah. So wait, what did I bring? Now I'm trying to remember what I did.
It was the episode it's an episode where the clones go into the bar. Yeah, and there's like the normal people there, and there's a lot of like animosity that's going on there between them.
Yeah, they don't get along. I mean, people think the clones are an aberration of sorts, right? Is the kind of the impression you get. And I think this is more of that kind of feeling, and that it's just, they feel like the clones are second class or third class citizens. They were bred for one purpose. That's all you know how to do. And well, we're here now. And, what does that say about you? I mean, your day is over. And it's time to move on for the new kids. But anyway, it just reminded me, and I hope I wasn't misremembering that, because I know that they were in like clones type of bars, but I'm pretty sure they had normies kind of going in there and starting trouble with them too. Well, even just normal people.
Norms. I don't know what they call those guys.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Normies sounds good though. Sounds official. Yeah. All right, so let's get to Alderaan, and there is this is where we see Saul's troops. They're kind of getting ready to meet up. They're about to take off. They're packing up. They've got some civilians with them as well. So they're doing some kind of an evac with them or helping them escape. I can't remember. One of them says, hey, we paid to get out of here. Yeah, or whatever, right? So they're not even really in this skirmish, if you will.
They're just moving people to safe locations, basically like a refugee type of thing.
Oh, okay.
While I was also moving supplies, it sounds like.
Yeah. And so the elite squad shows up. They open fire on everybody. And the battle's pretty good. I mean, it's a pretty intense battle. I mean, we're not going to get into every single one of the details, but, Guerrero's troops are taking heavy fire. You'd mentioned that this was very similar to A New Hope, right? The fourth reference here. What was it about it? Just the way the rebels were fighting?
Yeah, if you remember, right before the stormtroopers come into the ship in A New Hope, at the very beginning, and you had the guy looking above his gun, and then he gets behind it. It was exactly the same thing that the guy with the beard was doing, like shot for shot. And there was a couple others behind that like it's just the way that they were positioned in the sequencing of it, that it was very reminiscent, actually very, very close to A New Hope right there in the opening sequence.
Right. In the audio descriptions, it said that Crosshair is the one that used the flamethrower, but I know you're going to write a very stern letter to them and let them know that it wasn't Crosshair. It was actually one of the women that was using it.
Yeah, I couldn't tell which one, but yeah, it doesn't matter. But yeah, one of the women, because Crosshair was the first one. He fired the first shots, right? And so he's coming in behind them, and he is running in there. But you can actually see him in a different position too.
Mhm.
And you can also look at the visor, and it's clearly the the kind of the normal stormtrooper or clone trooper last phase type of design. But
Yep.
yeah, so yeah, it's a misnaming on the audio feed there, which is odd.
No, it's fine. I was just making a joke about
Yeah.
a stern letter.
I
So-
am. I like writing stern letters. I do them often.
You do them often.
Yes.
Taco Bell, we're looking at you. So, okay. So then they finally get into the ship, and somebody snipes. And I don't know who it is. I would imagine it's Crosshair. Maybe it's not.
No, ESO1.
It's ESO1. Okay, so somebody snipes the poor pilot. He gets shot. And again, this is very dark. Like there's a lot more
Yeah.
calculated cold shots. People literally dying on screen than I think we're used to in the Clone Wars or having seen the
man.
Clone Wars. And so
How
I
many
think this is
burn holes in chests do we see in this one
Yeah,
alone? I mean,
right.
probably 3. I think it was intense. And you're right. 2 of them were like right in front of you.
Yep. I mean, they
Mhm.
just keel over dead. And I mean, that guy gets shot right in the chest, the pilot there of that ship. But and I think this is part of, Disney Plus versus like Disney XD, right? We probably wouldn't have seen this on the normal Disney channel. So they've got a little bit of more wiggle room there in terms of what they can actually show on screen, I think.
Mhm.
So the ship crashes down again. It opens up. And then this is where we get this big moment of, I think there's one trooper left. Maybe there's 2. I forget now. There's at least one left. And she utters the words, "I don't know," when he asks, Crosshair asks, "Hey, what do you know about Saw Gerrera?" She says, "I don't know, but I wouldn't tell you if I," and that's all she gets out. And he just pulls out his gun and shoots her in cold blood, which is, again, that for me was the shocking moment. Like, whoa, this guy is really gone over the edge, and he's really hardwired, if you will, hard-boiled, if you will,
Yeah.
doing whatever he needs to do, whatever he's been told to do.
His line was so perfect too.
Yeah. I believe you. Yeah. That was, to me, that was like the standout line, the standout moment, standout line for the show. Because it sets the tone of just,
Right.
he's not who he is or who he was, even though we see him struggling with that later, but yeah.
Right. And then we're like, anyone else have some idea where Saw is at?
Yeah.
Where Gerrera is at?
I had put in here that it was very Phasma-like, because she was kind of the same way, right? I mean, she was not opposed to just
Especially
killing
in the,
people and still in cold blood.
yeah, and especially in the book.
The
We
novel,
got,
yes.
Yeah, in the novel. Yeah, we get that impression later on in the book in particular. But yeah. And then so they, again, this is where we learn that they're, refugees. They're just booking transport to somewhere else. And yeah, Crosshair's like, okay, well, you guys are of no use to the Empire. You have no value. And he's like, finish the job. And of course, ESO1 comes in and has a change of heart all of a sudden. He didn't realize the Empire was evil. I mean, we're
Right.
we're still figuring this.
We signed up to be soldiers, not an execution squad, is what he says.
Yeah, but you guys are wearing black and you have a guy that looks like Clint Eastwood and you choose a toothpick all the time. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you signed up for more than maybe you thought you did.
Yeah.
But you should be more perceptive, ESO1.
So yeah, I mean, this is where the Empire's pulled the wool over their eyes, if you will. In his mind, it's like, no, these guys are civilians. Well, let's take them in. We'll detain them.
Yeah.
Maybe get information out of them through other non-lethal methods, because they are just truly civilians. And Crosshair's like, no, that's not the mission. So again, it's just he's hardwired. He's hard programmed. And that's when he gives him that line. He goes, "You know why they put me in charge? Is because I can do what needs to be done." And
But he gave him his shot. He gave him his chance, though. Crosshair did give him a chance. Are you telling me you're not going to comply?
Oh yeah, that was great.
Oh, it was so cold. He was like, oh man, this is going to be a thing.
Yep.
This is going to be a thing.
Just say no and see what happens.
Right. And he made the mistake of turning his back. Oh, no, he didn't. He took it right in the chest.
He just pulled the trigger and shot him right there in front of everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, and Crosshair didn't even it wasn't even like a sudden draw or anything. He gave the other guy kind of a sporting chance,
right,
to pull his weapon, and it didn't matter. And all the others were just like, whoa, this guy means business.
And then he ends it with "Good soldiers follow orders," which seems to be a kind of running theme. So I wonder if we're going to get a title for one of the episodes called "Good Soldiers Follow Orders."
Yeah. And then, so he executes him and he goes behind them and tells them to finish the job, turns around and watches them do it. And you get this really cool close up of Crosshair's helmet. I should have made that the episode art this time, because if I would have had it, something like that, because it was so wicked and cool there.
Yeah.
But
that was that was the sobering moment, I think, for me, in this episode, just because it was darker. This was the darker pieces of it that, coupled with the lighter pieces later on at the very end, and certainly speaks to the complexity of what he's going through. And we'll come back to him in a little bit, because we see him clearly struggling with something at the very end.
Yeah, and just brief recap. So he executed a soldier without even letting her finish. He executed a team squad member, and then he gave an order to murder civilians and then watched them do it. So if you're keeping score at home, he's doing some really bad things all in one thing, and he's completely comfortable with it. We don't see any reservation so it's interesting to see what we saw later on in the episode. But anyway, just to recap all the nasty things that he's done, because it's going to play into this last scene here.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to the moon, and here we find they find the capacitor. The moon dragon attacks them. It knocks his mask off. He suddenly passes out because of oxygen. That thing runs off with the capacitor, and then she throws the mask on him. And then, this is kind of her moment, right? It's the call to action for her. And suddenly she's got to go in and try to find that capacitor that dragon took. And interesting, when you listen to the audio descriptions, it keeps calling it a torch. So I don't know if I had the wrong ones on, but that's what they call, like,
in the UK.
In the UK, yeah, they call those torches flashlights, but it's a flashlight, it's not a torch. Torches have fire. Yeah, and so she does her. So she follows the. So I've seen a lot of people. There's been a lot of discussion about is she using hunting tactics, right? I'm not 100% convinced because, one, it's not like there's tons of tracks around on this desolate moon. So in my mind, it's pretty easy to look down and see the tracks. Yeah, she picked up the sand and all that, or the dirt, and she was looking at it. But then when she gets in the cave, again, going back to the audio descriptions, it mentions that she's following the claw marks, right? So is she tracking it? Yes. Is it the level that Hunter's at? No, because I could follow the claw marks. So I'm not convinced
you're a Boy Scout leader. I would expect you to be able to.
Right. Yeah, that's easy stuff. But so I would expect her to be able to follow that. I'm not throwing shade at that theory at all, but but she does eventually get into there, and she sees the layer that it's got, and it's obviously been collecting a lot of stuff there over the years from who, I don't know, poor saps that have landed on this planet and had all their junk stolen.
Right.
But when she finds that canister, she says, "I guess I got lucky," and it seems like a throwaway moment. But is this the second time she said that, or did we just call it a lucky shot?
Oh yeah, lucky. She called it a lucky shot.
Right.
Lucky shot, I guess.
Yeah, lucky shot, I guess. And now this is the second time she says, I guess I got lucky. So I'm starting to go down this theory now.
Domino of Star Wars.
Yeah. So, and I put it in the notes because there's like Domino and Longshot from Marvel Comics. If you're familiar with those characters, their abilities are, they have a high probability. They're just lucky people, and they can willfully use this luck when they want to. And so I'm not really 100% sold on it, but it is twice now. The Star Wars in me says that, in my experience, there's no such thing as luck. So maybe it does just play into the Force ability, and they're kind of covering it with being lucky. But I just thought it was interesting that she said that.
Or we're teaming up here for a epic Star Wars, Marvel, X Factor, Deadpool crossover event of the millennia, because who knows what that mess would look like.
Yeah. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, if you don't know who Domino is, folks, go out and watch Deadpool 2 if you're old enough to enjoy that kind of humor and everything. But right. Yeah, Domino is in Deadpool 2. You get a very good idea of what she's all about.
Not a movie coming to Disney Plus.
Well,
maybe.
Well, yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Let's get off this. Let's back to Star Wars. So she, when she turns the light off, she realizes this thing gets calm. And so then she uses it kind of like a bone. She throws it, and it goes after it, starts eating it, and you see it. It was kind of cool effect of how it was taking the energy in.
Yeah, like glows this green. It's really pretty. I was trying to think what that. It reminded me of something, but I can't put my finger on it. What this
Godzilla?
Like, maybe so. It was just really. Up? It was just really cool. Yeah, it was like a charging glow, like all the way through it.
Yeah,
it was really neat. Actually, the tossing of the torch. Actually, I was going to make a comment about this anyway. The lighting in this episode, there were so many dark and the lighting was just amazing. The animation and what they're doing with this and just the advances they've made is incredible with some of this. And I calibrated my monitor, and when I did that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing so many little details and so many cool little colors and everything.
You're such a nerd. I calibrated with my monitor.
What else do you do on a Friday night? You calibrate monitors.
Calibrate monitors. Yeah, man. Who's with me? This guy know how to party or what?
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So it was kind of a cool effect. Also reminded me of Luke Skywalker when he threw his lightsaber in Jedi. You know, the swiveling of the torch.
The torch. Get out of here. I call it torch. Okay, so the dragon goes after that. It was cool lighting effect, but then I thought, okay, well, it serves another purpose too, right? It gives her light to get out of there, I guess.
Right.
Or maybe that's where the tracking came in. She was able to navigate her way out using the ability, whether she took it from Winter or was bred to have his abilities, which I think is probably. Oh, we'll get to that in a second. I think that's probably going to become the theory more than force sensitivity, and because of what Nalase says at the very end. But anyways, we'll come back there.
Merging them. But you also got to see where she was terrified too. I mean, she had the gun and it was shaking wildly. So you still see that she's not a soldier and she's not, I mean, she's brave, if a little stupid, but I mean, naive. Yeah. Or just, I don't know, willing to go out on a limb and do whatever. But I mean, clearly she's very, very scared. So it's not like she's just going to go gung ho and win the day every time. So it was good to see that, that youthfulness still there. They've done a really good job of balancing her with the maturity we were talking about earlier. And still she's still a kid. And it's like every episode we get to see kind of both sides of that. We saw it a lot in Cut and Run last episode, and we get to see it again here as well. Yeah. In a couple of different ways. And of course we see it really well at the end of the episode.
Yeah. And we see her we see her not using like lethal force to get out of situations. But then again, she shot Crosshair's gun, so maybe that theory doesn't hold up. But
she's thinking, though. I think is maybe the point, right? She's not action first and jumping into action and making impulse decisions. She's thinking and she's looking for opportunities. She's aware of things, right? And again, this is kind of that general awareness. Is there something to that? But yeah, so I view it more as that and wanting to use her mind to do things rather than just shooting it in the face, which would have been easy.
Yeah, it's the easy way out. Just shoot it.
Yeah.
So
well, it didn't really work in The Mandalorian, but
yeah, true.
With the Krayt Dragon.
So she comes out and she actually makes a comment of, I tracked him. So, I mean, I don't know. Okay, maybe it is.
It was cute, though. I will give her that. It was, I tracked him.
I tracked him.
I love how she says her name, too. Omega.
Yeah, it's like it's like Spanish for friend.
We missed number 5, by the way.
Oh.
When she drops into the dragon's hole, it was very Luke and Empire.
Drop into the cave.
Yeah, and dropping in the cave. Yeah, very reminiscent of that. So number 5.
There you go. Okay, she hands a capacitor to him. Hunter has this realization, like, "Wow, this kid did it," kind of thing. And I've been out this whole time. How convenient. But okay, and so that ends that, and then we get back to the hangar bay. So now the elite squad's coming back at this point, and Rampart initially is like, "Oh, Tarkin makes a comment of, hey, you lost one of your dudes." He's like, "Oh yeah, I mean it's bound to happen," kind of thing. Don't think he realizes how it happened.
Yeah, the battles or whatever it was his comment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Tarkin seems impressed with Crosshair, and he's impressed because where the Bad Batch weren't willing to follow orders, these new conscription soldiers are willing to follow the command of a clone trooper. So it seems like that does seem like this War Mantle is working out real well. At least he sees it as a lot of potential there.
Right. I mean, and again, they don't know. Tarkin would actually probably be more impressed with him if he actually knew what happened.
Right.
Because that he gunned down one of his own in order to, and the other ones fell into step seeing that show of strength. He would probably be more impressed with it. And I got to be honest, Rampart would probably be, I don't know.
Yeah.
Stocking the bookshelves or something with this idea, because why did you pick someone who's soft and saying, now I don't know if ESO1 was really speaking for the entire group, because he was like, none of us are going to shoot these people, right?
He did say that. That's true. Yeah.
Right. So I don't know if that was him trying to lead the others without their input, or if all of them really believed that. I'm of the opinion that they were probably all not going to kill these people.
Yeah. I get.
So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. So I think it would be more powerful for Tarkin to actually know what happened.
Well, I think he's going to know. I think it's going to come out in the next episode. I think they'll talk about it because, I mean, at some point I would imagine, or maybe the Galactic Empire doesn't care, but there's always this mission debriefing thing, and that awkward moment where they pull everybody in the room and say, "Oh, okay, by the way, great mission, you guys did it. Hey, what happened to ESO1? Oh, this guy shot him, right?" So that's going to happen, and I think you're right. I think Tarkin's going to like that. I mean, that seems Vader-esque like. It seems very Emperor-like, very Tarkin-like. So
And he doesn't hesitate either. I think that's what Tarkin's really looking for, right?
Right. Yeah, straight soldier kind of guy.
Yeah.
All right, so at that point, the squad, they go back into their bunker area, and it's the same area that we saw the Bad Batch in.
It's all clean.
It's all cleaned up now.
Well, and that's what Crosshair starts to notice, right? He starts gazing around, and we get this different perspective of Crosshair all of a sudden.
Yeah, because he sits down. I mean, he sits down, and he's kind of, I mean, there's like a heavy weight on his shoulders, right? And he's probably tired of, for what just happened, but at the same time, like, it does feel like he's struggling with this, or maybe there is an emotional piece of it. And so that kind of speaks, I think, to what Tarkin's talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to be able to sustain this? Is he going to be able to continue doing these things when he was so resistant to Order 66? And again, why that is, I don't know. Maybe it's the degeneration of the genetic code, or the inhibitor chips not really being able to go for as long as the war went on. I mean, there's probably all kinds of reasons as to why, but it does feel like he's struggling here. So I don't know if it's, the old him is still in there. I think it is, and that's why we're going to get a redemption arc at some point. But what do you think?
Yeah, and when we go into the room, there was other signs of it too. So not only did he pause and gaze around the room and see how clean, I think he was surprised how clean it was. Maybe he didn't leave it like that. But he also walks by Wrecker's tallies, right? And he side glances at it as he walks by somewhat slowly, and then moves over to his bunk and, like you said, sits there heavily, sets his rifle down, hands on his knees, and just kind of exhales.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, everything's kind of leading to, like, is Crosshair still in there? Can they think while they're under this influence? Is one of those things of like being trapped in your own mind, and like the terror that would be, right? And how that can make you insane, or is it that he feels these things, but no, I've got to do the job. I've got to, good soldiers follow orders over and over and over.
Yeah.
So I hope we get an idea of what that experience really looks like without all of the insanity that we had in the Clone Wars with it, because it was difficult to tell what was the reaction of the chip and not having the chip, and just and the body breaking down or something like that, or whatever the procedure was, versus like what's the actual experience like for this. We did get some of that, but I'd like from a, especially from a well-established character, like a well-established, meaning that he's an original clone. He's been around the entire
since
4
the beginning,
5 years or whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting to see, the before and after type of effects of that, considering he's never known anything but freedom for the most part.
I will say that that scene is, for me, was probably the second most powerful moment, because just the juxtaposition between where he was and how cold he was to that, I would not have expected it. So it tells me there's something else kind of going on there, right behind the scenes.
Right. I mean, because again, if he was just brain dead or something, he would just lay down and go to sleep.
Right. Like no big deal.
Or he just would have kind of sat there like a robot,
Mm-hmm.
I suppose. So, but yeah, it has a lot of questions about where's this going, and what's he actually, where is he going next, and what's going on right now.
No, I like what you said too about him, just like it's all in his head. Like he's having an internal struggle that he cannot get out of. He can't escape it, and it's just there, and it's going to creep up every once in a while. But I'm thinking that's the out too. Yeah, at some point, that's what's going to be how they connect with him, right?
And man, if they're baking his brain every day or after a mission or whatever it is, because they seem to be doing this as a rotation, and you can tell it's weighing on me so at the early episode, before we were talking about AZ, when he comes out of it and he swivels around, and you can see that fatigue. I mean, it's really tough with Crosshair because he doesn't give any emotion. He always seems like everything is laborious, right?
Yeah.
But there seems to be like a fatigue to it, and that there's discomfort, I guess. And so I'm wondering if that's wearing him down as well in some other ways, but then he has to go and perform, and he still performs, perfectly. But so, yeah, I'm wondering if there's some correlation with some of that as well.
It's almost like we keep a lot of Marvel references, but kind of like Winter Soldier kind of thing, where they're conditioning him to do this stuff, and
that's a great correlation, actually.
Yeah. So inside him, he's struggling with it, and they're, the Bucky's still in him there, if you will, but it's going to be a while before they can get it out.
Yeah. No, that's a great reference, actually. I think that's a perfect reference.
All right, we'll just end the show there.
So there's 6 if you want to include Marvel now.
6 references. Admiral Rampart. Was he promoted? Because they never said what he was. It sounded like he was, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he got very, I don't know.
Yeah,
he now knows the schedule.
The schedule.
That's what he said early in the episode.
He does. Okay, let's get to the big. I said it's not the big moment. For me, it was the more emotional, impactful moment was earlier. But in terms of like lore and where we're going with the storyline, this was pretty significant. So we get this conversation between Nalase and Lamasu,
Yeah.
and he's worried, and we know this, right? We saw that, we could see this, the writings on the wall here. He's worried that the clones are becoming obsolete. The Empire has replacements, and that means it's going to be less money. He even mentions with they're going to, if the clones become obsolete, that they're not going to be around either, right? That's their primary person that's paying the bills.
This is their survival, is how he puts it. Yeah.
I mean, they got nothing else on that planet but water and flying dragons, right? So they make mention of the degraded material of Jango Fett. So again, kind of hinting that they're producing less than optimal clones at this point. What that means, we don't know yet, but they seem to know. And so they're already talking about the next phase, and that they need to start creating this next phase of clones. And so I put in here that that maybe these guys really aren't genetically bad. You know, they've always talked about the Bad Batch and that they're, you know, misfits or genetically mutated, and it was an accident. But we're starting to get the feel that this was no accident. These were genetically engineered to be a good hunter, to be the strong guy, to be a, you know, marksman and all that. So it's Namaste Lamasu who says, "Hey, your experiment." Right? He says your experiment, mentioning Omega, I guess, was her experiment. What did you take from that?
No, exactly that. So clearly Lamasu. Now you got me questioning everything. Nalase and Lamasu. There we go. Yeah, clearly Lamasu is very much in the know about what she was doing and what she was concocting. Now, we don't, again, they were trying to build something new and different, which is curious because it's clearly not using exclusively the Jango Fett template then, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the genetic code from there. So is it coming from somewhere else? And then number 7, since we're including Marvel. So now we got number 7. Who's the donor, right? From Mandalorian. We're referencing that one. When Lama says, or Nala, good God, Albert, what have you done to me?
Yep.
So
War Mantle, just write it down. That's what it helps me.
Nala say, she says that, they need a specimen basically, right? They need a donor. And they're not going to want to go back willingly. So what did you take from that statement, though? Who is she talking about that they need?
So I think they need Omega, but they know that Omega is under the protection of Bad Batch, and the Bad Batch aren't going to willfully come back and give her up.
Okay.
So again, that's just how I took it. But we also know, or maybe they're going to figure out that maybe one way to get them back is to provide an opportunity to get Crosshair back. Kind of give him up so they can get Omega back in some way. I don't know. I'm really making stuff up now at this point, but yeah, that's how I took it. Is that when she says they need a direct source, which I took to be Omega, whatever they're trying to do, whatever this new batch of clones is, and I think this plays into that theory that she is some kind of a hybrid of all of them, that she has the abilities. I mean, short of her picking up a gonk droid, which may happen, I think she's displayed all of the. In a very light way, she's probably displayed all of the attributes. I don't want to get too crazy with that theory just yet because, again, was she really tracking? No. Was she really inspecting things and trying to figure things out at the level of tech was? No, not really. But if we see those skills start to progress at an accelerated level, then I think that theory holds some weight. And if that's the case, then, yeah, if they can go reproduce that Omega and make a bunch of those, that will be a far superior clone or soldier for the Empire, and that's really what Lamasu's trying to get on her. He's trying to find out he's trying to find the next big thing for the Empire because he knows they got a ton of money.
Right. I guess the question is though, can they do that fast enough? Because Omega's still young, and I'm with you. I'm agreeing with you in a lot of this because the clones that they're producing, they're not going to go be full-fledged warriors. I mean, Boba Fett's not a full-fledged warrior, right? He got his butt kicked a lot as a kid. So I'm curious what it's going to take for them to actually show this, if it, with Omega, I guess specifically, what is it that she would do or what abilities would she be able to exemplify that would be a very clear and apparent, mechanism that the Empire would actually be interested in. And I don't know, again, we're not seeing it enough, and I'm fine with that. These things, coming out over time, or maybe they're stress induced, like most of the superhero things tend to be, but I'm very curious how they would actually do that. But they want to keep it on the down low now, right? They want to make sure that they need to perfect this. They need to make sure that this is good, and they've got to get their source back, and in order for them to make an improvement or to make more progressions on it, so they can actually bring a finished product to the Empire, because Lamasu knows time is very, very short now, and the Empire's objectives are becoming more and more clear to them the longer that Tarkin's there.
Yeah, that's very true. Like there's a finite time. There's a small window of opportunity here for them to produce something to say, look, don't go down this other route. You want to stick with this, and we know that's not the case, right? So something's gonna fall out, right? Something's gonna fall out from that.
Has to. Yep.
We'll see how that plays out. So, okay, so we get Hunter back at the the barracks at this point. We've already talked about that. I think we kind of threw that out of order, and it's fine. But the last scene really is on the Havoc Marauder, and this is where we get that sweet moment where, all systems are operational. Wrecker takes Omega up there and shows her that he's created this little room for her, which I thought was really awesome. Again, a very touchy moment that she's had a room, because she says, I've never had my own room before, right? She's always probably shared it or lived with other clones. We don't know, but it ends on that line of, you're part of the squad now. So I think I don't know that we're going to get more of her trying to find her way in or feel her way through the squad, or feel like she's not part of the squad. I think they've done enough now to say, okay, we're past that, and now she is part of the squad, and so she just comes along. Maybe not. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I thought it was very touching. But I think some of it is also the squad, or maybe Wrecker, because again, him or Hunter would be the first ones to do this, right? Mm-hmm. Of actually accepting her and wanting to do things special for her to make sure she feels welcome. Right, not that she's part of the team. We can say everyone's part of the team or part of the squad, but you actually make them feel like they belong there, and that they're making room for you, and that they're giving up things for you in order to make sure that you do that. It's not catering to you; it's sharing what we have. So because we all benefit from all of this, right? And we've all got to, we could contribute to the whole, right? We're all equals, for lack of a better word, from all of that. So I thought it was very sweet, though. It was unexpected. Actually, Wrecker's a fairly good interior designer, so if he ever really wants to go to school for this, maybe he's got a job. And also, this was kind of point number 8 of callbacks. I'm stretching on this one, but it reminded me of Broom Boy in Last Jedi, looking up in the sky, like with her looks kind of up. She didn't linger very long, but it reminded me of Broom Boy. So that's the final one, I promise.
That's number 8. And
number 8.
How convenient that it's number 8, given that's the Last Jedi reference. So
that was not planned.
Yeah, I'm sure. You actually said something that was kind of made me think a little bit here at the very end just now. You said that they are kind of working as a team. They're looking out for each other. Very different than the Empire, who's all about stepping on each other and killing each other off and trying to be one up the next person and all that. And that's right. The environment that I think Tarkin wants, that the Emperor wants. It's that whole chaos thing, right? That kind of feeds the dark side, and we see a lot of that. But that's a stark difference between the clones and how they work together as a group, and we see that extended to the Bad Batch, and we're starting to see the inklings of the opposite with the Empire starting to form and take shape. So
right. And having said that, clearly there is functional dysfunction within Clone Force 99, right? So nothing's perfect.
True, right. Yeah.
But they know each other's strengths and weaknesses and what they can and can't do, and they trust one another under normal circumstances. I think now a bit of that trust is a bit weathered, and we don't know what the hell's going on with Echo.
Yep.
But you're right. It's a very stark difference from what we're doing. And now you have people within the squad wanting. Now, I think what would really be monumental would be if like Tech or Echo were to actually do something and have that moment, Tech in the last episode, Tech, put his hands up there and caught her when she was jumping down, if I recall. But I didn't want to put too much stock into that one because she had to get down somehow, and she's little.
But he's probably going to be the last one that does it. But I like that idea. I like the idea that she has the moment like she had with Hunter when they were walking, and she connects with them and says, "Look, it's not his fault." She's operating at a higher maturity level, but having those moments, and maybe she has this moment with either Echo or Tech or both of them where she's like, "Y'all are brothers, and you guys need to knock this off and stop this competition between you two, right?" And she becomes this mature personality that these guys don't have because they're Clone Force 99 and they've never really had it. They portrayed them in the trailers and earlier on as just kind of this, and they are, right? They're the big brash testosterone filled group that doesn't really connect with emotions and doesn't really think about these things, and having somebody like her to soften them up and kind of be the voice of reason and the voice of maturity, I think makes sense. I actually like it. I think it works really well. So I like what you're on to, where she's going to have these individual one-on-one moments where she's connecting with them and at the same time helping them grow, even though she's vastly younger than they are.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I hadn't quite put it like that because I was more singular. Maybe she would connect with Tech on an idea and be like, I didn't think about that. One rare moment of humility from him, or helping Echo adjust in some way. But I hadn't really thought about being, squad therapist. And that actually makes quite a bit of sense. So she's now got a degree in therapy.
She's
counseling.
everything.
She is everything. No, Avar Chris is everything.
Yeah.
Let's not get confused. I know you got her for the background today. She's looking very stoic.
This is the what's her name from Marvel? Miss Marvel, or what is it? Captain Marvel? Brie Larson.
Okay.
Somebody painted Brie Larson as Avar Chris, which I'm fine with. I'm down with that.
It's very nice art. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would give credit to the artist, but I don't have that in front of me, so I apologize to the artist if you're listening or watching. Okay, well, somehow we managed to take a 22-minute episode and turn it to an hour and 35 minutes. So you're welcome. But I think it speaks to the depth, right? I mean, like, if this was, we've done plenty of episodes on Resistance and Clone Wars and all that stuff, and we were like out in 45, right? And that's with like news and sure-ish. But I mean, quickly. But if you think about it, like, there's so much packed into these episodes that, and I don't think we're overdoing it. I think there really is this. There's a lot to speculate now as the series goes on. Things start to form up a little bit more, and we get a lot of clear indications of where this stuff is going. So there's less speculation on our part, so we may not be talking as much, but there is a lot of stuff that was laid out in this episode. And I think it just speaks to the writing and the fact that this was a good episode. I think they're 3 for 3 now.
I agree with you. And we've talked about this with High Republic too. Are you able to relate with the characters? When we went into this, or I'll speak for myself, when we did the original Bad Batch reviews, and we talked about this before in the Hype Show, we were like, okay, these are cool, but what would you ever do with these guys? That's kind of a one and done. This is like a short series type of thing. And now we've got the series, and we're kind of, I don't know about you, I'm kind of all in on these folks, and cared about them. I wasn't sure what to make about another kid involved, but they've actually worked Omega into it pretty well. We've got a lot of the tropes and a lot of the normal things that happen in these types of shows. But yeah, like you said, the writing and the execution, the dialogue, everything is in the visuals that we're getting. It's all coming together really nicely to where you actually, A, it's enjoyable to watch, but B, you actually care about the characters and where they're going and what they're thinking about, especially for folks like you and me and a lot of our listeners that want to think more about what's going on through their minds. And we know it's a show, but I mean, it's fun to go and think through these things. What are their motives? What are they wanting to achieve? What do they completely oblivious to at the same time, and how do they view one another? And those are just really fun and interesting things. But unless you have characters that resonate with an audience, you won't do that, because it'll be like Suicide Squad. I don't care.
Right.
Like the worst thing I could say about a movie is I just don't care about anything that just happened in there. None of the characters are compelling at all.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing I think I could say about a movie. And that's why I did with Suicide Squad. And I'm kind of saying that in part because there's some people in the chat who I think liked Suicide Squad, which I don't understand them. We're not friends anymore. But anyway, but no, you can't do any of that if you don't have that grounding right. And they took a team that was cool to watch, and they've actually made a story out of it. And I think that's really awesome and really fun that they've done that. And I'm very pleased with where this show is going. And it gives me a lot of hope for Star Wars animation going forward, where we've had a bit of the more of the slapstick type of comedy in the past. And I'm glad that now we've got a more serious in tone, but you still capture that spirit of Star Wars with family and with relationships and with humor as well, amidst all of the action and the seriousness. So really a terrific balance. I'm really not trying to be over dramatic about all of this, but I really am like in this invested in. I really do enjoy this quite a bit, and it's for all of those reasons.
Yeah,
you really hit on the head with that one.
Yeah, it's going to be we'll see. The sustainability of it all too. Well, we've got 13 more episodes to go, so
yeah, we got to sustain it, right?
Well, we might have a stinker in there every once in a while, but hopefully not.
And that's the thing. We were always worried, are we going to get a filler episode at some point? And this one had the danger of that, but there's, I think, but it didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's got to be something always give you that little nugget that keeps you moving forward. So we'll see if we can sustain that.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. We're going to be back in 2 days.
Yeah,
Sunday,
May 16th is the 10th anniversary birthday of the Cantina Cast. So we're going to have a special guest with us who's really not a special guest. Is Mike Rondo, the originator, the founder, the owner of everything.
Creator.
I think. Yeah. we got a creator. We think he edits the show every once in a while.
Eh.
But no, yeah, Mike's going to join us. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to look back on the 10 years of the Cantina Cast, and we're going to have some fun with Mike with some questions and a couple little games. And Albert's not telling me some of the things he's doing, which is always very concerning.
Yep. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Right. But hey, folks, if you want to get part of the conversation, earlymedia.com/Discord. There's a lot of great conversation going on with Bad Batch. We are using the little spoiler marks in there. It is a spoiler. You can use it as a spoiler channel, but people actually being very conservative with that and being very conscious that not everybody's watching and using spoilers. So if you'd like to come join us, we have channels that are spoiler free. We got a channel that's available to talk about spoilers. We'd love to get your input on it. Tell us all the things that you're thinking of, and definitely want to call out the folks that we had in the chat tonight. And thanks everyone for being there. Rob, Twan. We had a couple others early on, and appreciate you guys coming out on a Friday on an impromptu kind of show.
Yep. Drink the Movies, Kenneth. There's some other ones in there, but yeah. And before we go, you mentioned that. So we've talked about this. We again 10th anniversary. We just did the alumni show, the very first one with Becca Benjamin. So she was a contributor to the Cantina Cast. So if you're a huge supporter, I'm going to call it fan, whatever, of the show and how we got to 10 years, that is worth a listen. There's so much stuff that I learned that I had no idea, which was amazing stuff. But she did a really good job. And so take a listen to that episode. It's out on Patreon right now as of this recording, and I'll release it here, I think tomorrow or on the day of. We'll actually release that to the public as well. So if you're a Patreon member, you've got that sitting in your queue waiting to listen to. So
yeah, I mean, you get to see some fantastic art that Albert made for the show, a special logo and everything. It's awesome. It's fantastic. Go sneak a peek at it.
You're too much. Go on, please.
Okay. Well, yeah. So what he did. Oh, sorry.
All right. With that, we're gonna get out of here. We'll see you guys in 2 days. Any final words before we go?
No, you told me to shut up. So I'm gonna stop.
All right. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.